grief is interesting because my first real experience of it, certainly with a close family member of my dad. I mean, my dad, I would class him as a best friend. I don't say that flippantly. He didn't miss a single football match that I played in for 10 years. I realize it's probably what it's like. Your head goes all over the place. It was ready for him to go because you don't want to see a parent in that level of distress. I was in that position where I held his hand when he passed and actually left us. And nothing really prepares you for that.
Good morning, Nick. Before I guess we get into it and everything, for long-time listeners of our show, you'll know that certain things have been going on in our family, and we're going to use this episode to explore that in a little bit more. And so I wanted to start this show off really by saying to everyone listening that I hope you take something away from the shows that we're doing, because both Nick and I are going through things at the moment which we feel like will help other people. And I know that for Nick, and he's going to explain what's going on at the moment in particular, is going through a particularly challenging time. So I just wanted to extend my heartfelt support to you right now, Nick, and wanted to see how are you?
I'm all right. I think I say all right. I say I'm right in inverted commas, Harry. You've been there very recently. To bring some context for those that are listening, I feel like, this show is, we want to be positive, bring positivity to the show and give mindfulness techniques. And I think, interestingly, on our journey, you and I have been challenged more than probably a lot of our listeners have been, maybe, in some of the things that we go through. So, and I'm aware that we've talked about loss and grief a lot on this show. Harry very sadly lost his father on Christmas Eve quite suddenly. We've done an episode where I talked about the loss of my dog, who'd been with me for 16 and a half years. And sadly, for those that have been listening for a long time, I lost my dad on Monday, the 18th, last week. And I knew it was coming. And I guess I was as prepared as anyone can be. But now I'm now in the other side of that journey. I would say it comes in waves. And I did a newsletter on this about how I was feeling, which I'm sure when I read back in a week's time, I'll feel completely different again. But there's 5 stages of grief, and I think I'm probably in a few of those stages. I don't know if I'm in acceptance. I don't know if I'm in denial. I'm certainly not angry, which is great. I feel like I've probably been grieving pre the loss of my dad anyway, because I knew it was coming. So I think I've done a lot of the internal work already. Or is that just me in that denial stage? I don't know. There's a bit of me I was saying to you just a moment ago where now I'm back at home. I can kind of still imagine my dad still being in his place. So I can run as normal because I wouldn't see my dad every single day. I'd see him at weekends. So as far as I'm concerned, as we record this today, my dad could easily be at home, and therefore it's much easier for me to process. So does that mean I'm in denial? Is that just a coping mechanism? I don't know.
Honestly, I was the same. I'm still the same. Like, even sometimes when I go to the house, I'm in the house and I think, often he was in the study when I'd be putting out somewhere, or in the garage. So I kind of think, oh, he's still around. And I was thinking about this earlier today, is that I don't know. I feel like the stages of grief, the 5 stages, or whatever it ends up being, are fluid. Like you can go forward and backwards with them. And I feel like I'm still in a bit of a denial stage. I think I've had anger at certain points. And the anger is different kind of anger, like whether it's anger for me not doing enough, or for me not spotting this heart failure years ago, for the NHS, for all their screw ups maybe, or it goes all over the place. But I still feel like my overwhelming emotion is kind of denial. And like you say, because you're not with that person every day, at least I don't. Day to day, there's not much difference. I think, like for my mum, and it'll be maybe similar for your mum, it's so different, right? 50 years with your parents, 52 years with mine of marriage, and you're with that person day in, day out. And that's, in a way, maybe the closer analog is with your dog, right? Because that your dog was with you every day, and they're in the house, and you notice that they're not there.
I've started watching The Gentleman. I don't know if people are watching it or not. And it starts without, I don't think it ruins anything because it's about how the family reacts based on the film. But it starts with the father passing away in his nice comfy bed with a little bit of oxygen machine. I was thinking, you know what? I've never seen it. It's nothing like, my experience was nothing like the movies show you. I mean, You don't get the commodes in those pictures. You don't get the hospital beds, the medications, uh, I got a call while I was away in the States. I was in Austin, and I got a phone call to say you need to come home, as soon as you can, because we were at that moment now. And the amount of, unfortunately, he'd digressed in the time I'd seen him before. It was only 5 days. I was with him 5 days before, and I came back, and it was a sleepless flight, as you can probably imagine. And I turned up, and he'd gone downhill quite considerably. And I don't think my brain's yet fully. Well, it certainly hasn't. We talked about small T trauma, big T trauma in previous shows. It's definitely a trauma that I don't think my brain is fully compartmentalized yet, or deconstructed yet. That's probably the better word. I mean, in the sense that the grief is interesting, because my first real experience of it, certainly with a close family member, my dad. I mean, my dad, I would class him as a best friend. I don't say that flippantly. He didn't miss a single football match that I played in for 10 years. He's the first person I called if I did an event. He flew out and watched me do Ironman events. We went to cricket together, rugby together. We did all kinds of things together. So I feel like I've really lost a dear friend as well as a parent. And so I don't really know where I am, but what I will say, and I realise this is probably what it's like, your head goes all over the place, is I've got that. It was good. It was ready for him to go, because you don't want to see a parent in that level of distress. And the level of distress was way beyond any of the movie I've ever seen, in terms of where you are in that state and what cancer can do to you when it's really riddled through you and attacked every part of your body. And that was, I knew it was coming, but to actually see it and live through that was a shock to the system. And I was bedside with him solidly for 72 hours. I don't think I left his side probably for a total time of maybe 2.5 hours in 72. And, I was in that position where I held his hand when he passed and actually left us. And nothing really prepares you for that. And those 3 days, we had he could barely talk because he had a tumor on his throat, which meant that he was to really choose his words, and you could barely hear them. And part of that was a good thing, in the sense that he chose his words very carefully. And we had some moments where we even laughed as a family, but nothing quite prepares you for that. And I feel like there's a bit of me where my brain has just shut that out. I don't want to shut those memories out, because they were the most pertinent and probably important memories I'll have. And I feel privileged to have been by his side. I feel it was the right thing to let him go and for him to let go, because the level of pain, the palliative care team said he's in something called total pain. That made me very upset. I feel myself get upset now, because to hear your parent is in total pain is never nice to hear. You don't want anyone to go through that. It took 3 days from when I returned to when he eventually passed. And on this day 2, he told me he was frightened. And that was, again, something that brought me and my brother-in-law to tears at the moment, because you don't want someone you love to feel frightened. You want them to feel prepared. You don't want them to be in pain. By day 3, he wasn't scared anymore. And I think we all knew it was going to be that day. He started saying the things that you say. You kind of have a moment of clarity. And he said all, he loved us, he was proud of us, and eventually the time came where he let go. So as you can see, it's still pretty raw. It comes in waves. And you've obviously lost your father very recently on Christmas Eve, right? And I feel like we're doing, every time we meet Harry, we seem to talk about loss. But our show is about you and I having a conversation. And if I met you in a pub right now, in a restaurant, there's no way this isn't what we would be talking about. So, yeah.
I mean, as you say all that, the thing that got me, and I was thinking about it yesterday driving home, is obviously I wasn't there when my dad eventually died. I arrived like maybe an hour or two later, well, probably about 2 and a bit hours later after I'd driven up. But you talk about, parent being frightened and all that. And for me, it's the voice of my mum on the phone, calling me at 9:30 in the morning, and knowing I was basically helpless to do anything, and I was 100 miles away. And that sheer kind of panic in the voice, that's the hardest thing for me, because I wasn't there at the end, and luckily she was, and luckily I think I guess your your entire family was there? Was it all your brothers and sisters there? Or yeah.
Yeah, everyone. My brother, unfortunately, was in the States. He couldn't get. He couldn't be there. But yeah, the four of us were there, holding his hand and looking after him as best we could.
Yeah, and that's the best you can hope for. I mean, like, it is the best you can hope for. I mean, to live a long, happy life and to be surrounded with loved ones when you pass on. I mean, I guess we haven't really talked about this, and maybe this is a segue into that, but because when you talked about your dad feeling fear and then kind of going past that, what is your what do you believe happens? What do you think this is the end? Do you believe in an afterlife? Do you believe in, I don't know, what do you believe in?
Well, I've got. I can share a couple of things. I'll share a funny story, and this is where you feel inappropriate laughing, but maybe it's British humour, maybe it's not. I don't know. On day 2, I hope my dad doesn't mind me sharing this. We'd gone through, he was frightened in the morning. We got to the afternoon. All of us are by his side. We're holding his hand. And he said, right, and he could barely talk. So I said, this is very different to the scenes you see in a movie. Like, he's in a lot of distress. He chooses his words very carefully. And he asked us all to be quiet. He didn't want us to be, he didn't want a vigil either. He didn't want everyone doing emotional music. That's not what he wanted. We were there by his side. And he said, everyone to be quiet. And I think it's ready now. And I love you. And he gave his, a little bit of a talk. I mean, very few words, but said the important things, and said, I'm going to go to sleep now. I'm ready to let go. And my sister said, we'd like us to say a prayer. And he said, that'd be nice. And that was kind of the last thing at that moment we thought we heard him saying. We thought, and I don't know how it works scientifically, right? This is not my area of expertise. But you watch enough movies and things to feel that when eventually people get, if you're in that level of discomfort and pain and cancer position he was, that maybe he has the choice to let go when he's ready. So we kind of thought that was the case. So my sister starts to say a prayer. It's very, very emotional. Now he's got 2 dogs which bark with a high-pitched bark like no other. I mean, it gets right inside your bones, right? And they've got 2 of these things, and the slightest thing at the door makes them go mad. Anyway, becomes important. So he says his goodbyes, says, I'm ready to let go. It goes into silence. My sister says a prayer, and we're all very emotional in the moment. And then literally as we assume that's going to be the moment, someone comes to the front door, the dogs go mad, start barking. My dad wakes up and goes, fucking dogs. It's just like, I mean, he lived for another day. We went the following day. And I'll never know if that was the moment that maybe he would have gone or maybe not. We had a good giggle about it. It was, it was funny in the moment, and it snapped us out of that trauma. And we had a giggle as a family.
You have to find humor. You have to find other emotions as well, because grief is one emotion, but I mean, like, life ending in this realm or this plane of existence is maybe a transition to another, or at least a memory or a celebration of the experience that person had. I was thinking about this yesterday as I was driving, because we went so on Sunday, which was a couple of days ago, it's Tuesday now. So on Sunday, it was what they call in Greek, mnemosimo, which is basically we go to church on the 40th day after he's died, and then the 3 months, which is what it is now, and then 6 months, 9 months, and then it's every year after that. And so it's the 3-month anniversary of his passing. And so we went also to the grave, and the grave is, you have to wait for like 2 years for the soil to settle before you actually properly do the grave. So it's just a bit of dirt at the moment with the cross and everything else. But I really don't feel connected to that space. I can't imagine myself going there and sitting and chatting, and like I used to see on the movies where they go to the graveyard and sit and chat with their parents. However, for me, I felt I was driving, and I'm driving the car that is associated really with my dad. I think it might be in my mum's name, but it was kind of my dad's car, as it were, and also the license plate, even though it was a random license plate, it stood for. So the number is the date of his birthday, like 19th of September. So it was like 19, and LO for kind of London, but then it was Professor Dimitri Kalymnios, PDK. So it feels very much like him. And so when I'm driving that car, I feel more connected to him. And when I look at, we created these little cards, with a photo, and it's not traditional in Greek culture, but I think my mum saw it at some funeral, so we did it for my gran and we did it for my dad. And it's got a few photos over the ages from 18 all the way up to 80, and a few choice words. And I have that on the shelf, and I see his photo every day. And so I feel connected there, and I feel connected in other spaces. I don't feel connected at the grave because I don't see that the body, I don't know. I just feel that the body is the body.
I think I'm in a similar. I didn't answer your question earlier, and I'm glad you went back to it because I ended up talking about a little bit of the story. But let's talk about the spirit thing. So I don't know where I sit on the curve of what comes next. I'm certainly not atheist in any way. I'm open to anything. I haven't got a set of beliefs that we go anywhere. I'm just open to. I'll discover that when the time comes. But I'm certainly open to any possibility. Now, I think I mentioned in a previous show, I've been reading. A friend of mine, Sarah, gave me a book or recommended a book rather called Diary of a Forest Monk. And interestingly, I'm not necessarily recommending the book, but towards the end of the book, he says goodbye to his father through, and he's in Switzerland, so he was able to choose to end your life and euthanasia. So that's what he chose to do. And being a monk, he said that he let his dad go, and it was about 30 minutes later. He said he felt the spirit left the body, and what was left there was the shell, if you like, the body, but not the spirit. And that, for some reason, that was really resonated with me pre-losing my dad here. And I got the book on audio so I could share it with my mum and my sisters and said, look, I don't know what's in the next life, right? But let's wait 30 minutes. When he's gone, whenever that time comes, let's hang around and let's not, suddenly get on our phones or anything like that, or whatever we need to do, leave the room, just be with him for 30 minutes, because it might be the last 30 minutes we get with the spirit of my dad right after he's gone. So anyway, we made that agreement, and my dad said goodbye and took his last breath, and that was all very emotional. But we stayed for 30 minutes. Now, over time, it was 26 minutes in, which is absolutely true. My brother phoned 10 minutes before he ended up leaving us, and asked to see how my dad was. And I felt like my dad heard that and knew that my brother had called. And I felt like knowing my brother was okay and he'd checked in was kind of my dad's way. I felt it was my dad's way of going, okay, now I can let go. I've heard from all my children, and that's fine. My brother was going into a 10-hour flight, so he'd heard from the brother, and that's fine. And then 10 minutes later, my dad left us, and we stood by the body for what was going to be 30 minutes. And my mum decided to phone my brother. So it was the right thing to do would be to phone my brother and let him know. I phoned my brother, sorry, not that it really matters, to say, no, my dad's gone, you need to know, but we're going to stay with him for 30 minutes. And this is about 20 minutes after. And then obviously my brother wants to speak to my mum, so he's speaking to my mum. And my dad left us at 12:05. And at 12:31, my mum was on the phone to my brother having a conversation. And from nowhere, she went, what was that? We're like, what? A huge gust, a huge wind. If one of you open the window, don't open the window. I don't want Howard to get cold. We're like, no, the window's closed, Mum. If one of you fanning something, we're like, no, I've just held a huge wind has just hit me. And she took her completely out of the conversation with my brother. Giving my brother really sad news of dad. So you don't get caught sideways for no reason in that kind of moment. And she was completely taken out of it and said, I've just felt something pass me. And she's convinced, she's absolutely convinced that was the spirit of my dad. And interestingly, if you look at the timings, it was 26 minutes past. And we all felt after that moment that the dad's spirit probably had left the room, if that way inclined. And to this day, my mum feels that was the spirit of my dad, and he's in the house. And there is a feeling in it. There have been some funny things going on in that house since, and I know people will be very, very skeptical. Very little things, but they are things that makes my mum feel connected. Little things like she can't work the TV and the TV turned on. It's absolutely true. Lights flickering in different rooms when we're having different stories. There's a song that really reminds me of my dad. I had a moment. It's absolutely true. My wife will contest to it, and it comes in waves. I got very emotional. And there's a song that my whole family know reminds me of my dad. And it just started. Alexa was already on, but that song came on Alexa as I was having that moment. There's those little things that come up. I don't know what's in the next in the next world. I wouldn't say I was particularly religious, but there was a moment that took my mum almost off her feet 26 minutes afterwards, and she still feels very.
I believe that. I mean, like when I arrived at my house, I think my dad's spirit had already left the body, but I felt it was still in the room. I spoke to a friend of mine actually before I went upstairs, whose wife lost both her parents in quick succession a couple of years ago, and he was saying, oh, I think the body sticks around. I don't know if he said like the spirit sticks around like 24 hours or 3 days or something like that. Or some people say different things. I definitely felt that there was an essence in there, and I could actually dictate where in the room that was emanating from. It was just sort of at the foot of his bed. I was thinking about this the other day, and it might be because I've started watching this Three Body Problem on Netflix, which is a very famous book out of China, which someone recommended to me about 2 years ago to read, science fiction book. It's now been made into a Netflix series, and it's around this alien civilization that is in contact with Earth and coming to Earth to basically wipe us all out. But yesterday they were talking about higher dimensions, and obviously I've done a bit of physics, well, a lot of physics and quantum physics and everything, and thinking about higher dimensions, and they've managed a way to get into these higher dimensions. So we have 3 dimensions or 4 dimensions if you think of time as a dimension. We've got forward, backwards, up, down, and left, right. So that's the 3 dimensions, and the 4th dimension is space, is time. Sorry, and there are theories that suppose that there may be other dimensions, right? 10, 11, or multiple dimensions that are just so tightly folding in on themselves we can't see or sense them. And even that analogy I don't think really works, because the idea of folding is a 3-dimensional position. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is it might be because of that. I was thinking, what if, like, and I guess this goes to like spirituality, but and Wayne Dyer said it, we're not, humans having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And what if, like, I don't know if it's an afterlife or anything like that, but we are just, maybe we are some sort of alien race or whatever, and we have come into these meat sacks or these bodies to experience life, right? To experience ice cream, chocolate, smoothies, love, wetness, whatever, because we are in another dimension, in a higher dimensional. So, and that's what we perceive as religion, God, heaven, whatever. And I think we talked about ayahuasca before and DMT, the substance that is in most living things, I think, but it's also in humans in abundance when you're born and die. It's created in the brain stem somewhere, and that they call it the spirit molecule, because they think that that's when the spirit enters and leaves the body, because it's in abundance at those 2 points. Now you can also get it in abundance when you take DMT or ayahuasca or things like that, and that's when certainly my experiences with either ayahuasca or DMT have led to me kind of dissolving the body and kind of existing in a different kind of plane. But it's weird. It's not like dreaming. It's sort of like dreaming, but not like dreaming, where you've got some level of awareness, but it's weird. It's connected. I don't know how to describe it. So I guess the upshot is I don't really know what's what, right? I certainly don't believe that all that is all that is. I think that is just a belief, which can be a lie that I tell myself. But I find it hard to believe that. I think we've talked about the Wayne Dyer twins in the womb quote before, I think, haven't we? And I feel like that is a very appropriate parable or analogy for it, because we don't really know. And so I'm open to the possibility, for sure, that there's lots of other things out there. I think there have been lots of experiences where people have had near-death experiences, death experiences, and they've experienced things that we can't really explain. So I think that there is something. At least that makes it easier for me. But in terms of, I wanted to talk about that song.
And we've talked about energy. We've talked about energy before as well, haven't we? Right? I mean, irrespective of whether people believe we carry on or we don't, there's no disputing that if you're in that space, and I know a lot of people haven't been there, but if you have, there's an energy difference. Like the energy in the room shifts, the energy changes when life is is no longer there, and the energy, the rules of energy would dictate that it has to go somewhere. And where is it? And I don't know. I just think there's a lot that's unexplained. I think
Energy is I mean, like consciousness is a form of energy. Everything's a form of energy. So that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transferred into one form or another. So that essence that is creating, that spirit, which is the breath, which is molecules, which is atoms, is going somewhere. Where, I don't know, but I definitely feel there's a connection. So I just wanted to share this story with you, because when you talked about the song, it really reminded me of this experience I had in Australia. I think I might have even shared this with you before. Have I shared the one about the camping and the song in the middle of nowhere?
Yeah, you have, but share it again. I don't think you shared it on the show. I think you shared it with me. So
I'm not sure. I can't remember if I shared it on the show or not, but apologies if people have heard it before. But it was one of these profound moments for me. I was camping and I was going around Australia, the outback, in a VW combi van with three Dutch girls at the time. And one of the Dutch girls I quite liked, and I'd invited her into the group, and so she came with us. I think we were traveling to Darwin from somewhere or other, and two of us were camping in a tent. Two of them in the VW combi van. So myself and the girl that I quite liked was there. Now I wasn't sure what the deal was, and we were like lying next to each other, and I was thinking, I need to make a move. And I'm really bad at kind of reading signals and everything. So I said, look, if I hear, and we're camping in the middle of nowhere, if I hear this particular song, then it's a sign that I should make a move. Okay. And the song was Show Me the Feeling of Being Lonely by the Backstreet Boys. For some reason, I don't know why I thought of that song. And then I kid you not, a few seconds later, I hear that song playing, and it's playing from like this campsite about 2 miles away, really loudly. Well, not loud for us, but it must be loud there. And I really kicked myself because I didn't actually make a move, right? I didn't make a move. And I still can't hear that song and not feel some level of regret for not making that move, because it kind of epitomizes a lot of my life in that I don't pull the trigger enough. And I overthink it. Like you're a doer, you're a ready, fire, aim person. I'm a ready, aim, fire kind of person. And
I think that's something that I've struggled with here, though. And I put it in I have a newsletter called Mindset Musings, which covers some of the stuff we talk about in today's show. I publish it on LinkedIn, and it was quite cathartic to write. But there was a bit that I had to admit to myself where I've struggled. So in my run up to my dad's situation, and we've shared some things that we've done. We tried to. I read a book called Cured, which is all about spontaneous remission, people that have miraculously healed themselves from terminal illness. And there's 4 pillars in that book that he believes if you have those 4 pillars, then it improves your opportunity for spontaneous remission. And my grandma, I mentioned on the show, is someone who actually has been through spontaneous regression or remission, where she was diagnosed with a terminal brain tumor, went away, was violently sick in the night, came back, and the tumor had completely cleared, and she lived for over 3 decades on, and she shouldn't have. So in my head, and because I'm someone who likes to solve things, I feel like I put my mind to something, I can do it. As you say, I'm a doer, I'm proactive. I will take whatever I need to do to get somewhere. I thought maybe I could help my dad, and we could buck the trend and beat cancer on our own, and with the medications as well, but do other things that maybe other people aren't doing. So we got an infrared sauna installed in his house. Lots of science about the benefits of infrared sauna treatments. We changed his diet to whole food, took him completely off sugar. Glucose feeds cancer anyway, so we thought that'd be a really positive move. Introduced protein because that's the building blocks. Loads of little things that we did. I think even right to the last, there's a bit of me that always knew we were going to lose him, but there was a small percentage part of me that just felt, even right to the last moment. And there was a moment, and this is, oh God, I almost forgot this. I'll share it. Me and my sister with my dad, this is the evening of day 2, right? And he's in that place of total, the palliative care team said he's in a place of total pain. He's unable to move any part of his body. So he needs to move his arm. He's got bed sores. We're moving his arms. We're moving his legs, do everything for him. And I completely forgot this happened. It's quite funny. You remember certain things, probably because I've blocked them out. And he said, I need to move my arm. So can you grab my arm? So my sister Imogen gets one arm, I get the other. And then and he wants to lift them up and move them. And he suddenly goes, "No, hold on, I can do it." And if you're watching this on visual, he lifts his arms and does this like a bench press, turns his arm palms over and pushes his arms up by himself. First time he's moved his arms unaided for best part of a week. Comes down, he does it 4 times. Right? We're like, bloody hell, Dad. You can take the farmer out the man, right? Not the man out the farmer. Like, what's going on? Like, where's all this strength comes? And he went, hold on, I'll do it again. He did it. He did 4 more. Then he went, and 1 more, and put it down. It was like, and then literally went down and fell asleep. But he found this energy to be able to do something. He'd been unable to move a single part of his body unaided, and was suddenly able to find the strength and clarity to be able to communicate with us to do this random thing. And there's lots of stories where people suddenly find strength before their last, but he actually didn't go for another, what was that? Probably another 15 to 18 hours after that moment. But it was really strange. And the reason I highlight it is it was particularly odd in the moment, and we were Imogen were like, but it gave me that sparkle of hope again. Maybe, and I even said, maybe my dad could be the next Lazarus. Maybe he's still gonna beat this. There's some fight in there. And I think when he eventually went, there was a realization for me that I couldn't solve the problem. There was a realization that all the books I'd read, all the things we'd done, there's a feeling of helplessness. I don't want to make this about me, but it's part of something I've had to come to terms with, that I couldn't solve the problem. And that's been really, really hard for me to know that, yeah, again, regret, could I have done more? Could we have made bigger changes? I don't know. But that was a frustration that I'm not used to not winning. And that sounds like a terrible thing to say, or achieving if I put my mind to it. I couldn't solve that problem. What I wanted to do, and just to take the conversation back a little bit to spirituality, as you mentioned the parable, and I don't think we shared it in detail with our listeners before, but it's a really powerful parable. And I'd just rather you sent it to me. I've got the link here. I'm going to read it out, because if people haven't heard it before, it might just change people's thinking a little bit.
It's so powerful. And I wanted to actually, before you share the parable, because I was listening to an interview with, I think it was David Hawkins and Deepak Chopra, and he was kind of grilling Deepak Chopra, like, what's all this quantum healing business, blah, blah, blah. And I've read some of David Hawkins' books. Is it David Hawkins or Richard Hawkins? No, Richard Hawkins. Richard Dawkins. No. Yeah. Sorry. Richard Dawkins, right? The God delusion and all of that. And I think, I'm not sure if he's an atheist now, or maybe he's agnostic, but he's, you know, really against this kind of stuff generally, from what I remember. He may have changed his tune a bit. And then I just thought, this, for those people listening who are staunch, atheists or even agnostics or whatever, I think this parable, just really sit with it and listen to it carefully as Nick explains it, and just let it sit with you for 24 hours and contemplate it. Okay.
I mean, you said I love parables anyway. I love all my Buddhist ones. This is not I heard before. So it's kind of a parable of life after delivery. So it says, in a mother's womb were 2 babies. One asked the other, "Do you believe in life after delivery?" The other replied, "Why, of course. There has to be something after delivery. Maybe we are here to prepare ourselves for what will be later." "Nonsense," said the first. "There is no life after delivery. What kind of life would that be?" The second said, "I don't know, but there will be more light than here. Maybe we will walk with our legs and eat from our mouths. Maybe we'll have other senses that we can't understand right now." The first replied, "That is absurd. Walking is impossible, and eating with our mouths? Ridiculous. The umbilical cord supplies nutrition and everything we need, but the umbilical cord is so short. Life after delivery is to be logically excluded." The second baby insisted, "Well, I think there is something, and maybe it's different than it is here. Maybe we won't need this physical cord anymore." The first replied, "Nonsense. And moreover, if there is life, then why has no one ever come back from there? Delivery is the end of life, and in the after delivery there is nothing but darkness and silence and oblivion. It takes us nowhere." "Well, I don't know," said the second, "but certainly we will meet Mother, and she will take care of us." The first replied, "Mother? You actually believe in Mother? That's laughable. If Mother exists, then where is she now?" The second said, "She is all around us. We are surrounded by her. We are of her. It is in her that we live. Without her, this world would be not, and we could not exist." Said the first, "Well, I don't see her, so it is only logical that she doesn't exist." To which the second replied, "Sometimes, when you're in silence and you focus and you really, really listen, you can perceive her presence. You can hear her loving voice calling down from above. A parable from your sacred self." I just thought that was really interesting, because you can understand both perspectives, right? And I think it's just a incredibly clever parable that brings a lot of the things we're talking about into focus. But yeah, I'm really glad you shared it with me.
Yeah, I think about that parable a lot, and you know, I yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it's like, I mean, some people will argue, it's our human nature to kind of want to believe in things afterwards, but I also think that we can't be so arrogant as well to think that all we know is all we know, right? Like information is changing so rapidly about our knowledge of different concepts, physics, laws of physics, all of that is changing so much that we can't have that, that arrogance to believe that we know it all. Certainly, when you die, it's the end of whatever this particular moment is. I mean, but where does I don't know. Yeah, so I think something happens, but like you say, you think, okay, well, why can't we then connect and communicate with the people that pass on? And some might argue that some people do, right? Some people still have that tether, and it might be in a subtle way, like a TV turning on randomly, or a music playing that reminds you of your dad, or it might be some people literally, sixth sense, I see dead people kind of way. So I've met a fair number of people who have got, I guess, extraordinary perceptions on things. For me, it's hard to believe because I'm a little bit of a. It's like I've listened to all this stuff. I've read all the material, and I'm still a bit of a skeptic in my heart about certain things, right? Because yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I'm like and even to the point, I remember I struggled with. When I worked in IT, so I worked in IT for a number of years within the London Stock Exchange. But the thing I found, and I realized why I didn't really resonate with IT in general and a lot of things, is that it was so abstract. I know it's less abstract than, say, theoretical physics a lot of the time, but it wasn't building anything tangible, right? If you're a builder, you build a house, you can see it, you can feel it, you can touch it, you can see it develop. When you're writing lines of code, or not that I was writing lines of code, but you're doing technical stuff, there wasn't anything I could really see or touch, right? Other than a little icon on the screen and things. And for me, it just didn't make a huge amount of sense, right? And maybe you're similar as well, because I think like, we're both kinesthetic kind of people, which is we're into our sports, we're into our movement, and we like to feel and see and touch things. And so for me, it was really hard to grasp that concept. And that might be why it is hard for me now, even though I've read all the spirituality books, I've done the meditation, I've been on the retreats, I've watched things like The Secret and What the Bleep Do We Know and quantum physics, and all of this stuff. But yeah, at some level, I'm still like meat and two veg kind of person. Like, where it's like, it's just like, so yeah, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to kind of think, but also it gives me comfort to kind of believe that something beyond.
Since the 18th, I've had to work really hard to try and lean in to the things that I've been reading and hopefully learning to help me. But people ask how you feel, and the answer isn't often followed by tears of emotion. If I'm honest, and I'm very early days, and I appreciate that, and I know lots of people listening to this would have been through this experience as you have, Harry, and as I'm going through now. Just feel very, very empty. I think that's the bit. There's a void that's left, and it's hard to understand. I think where I struggle is it's not a feeling that I'm used to either, because I'm always so motivated to do things. I always wake up with a huge amount of drive and emotion and motivation and hunger. And I just feel really, I know it's very, very soon, but that's the overwhelming feeling I'm with at the minute. And I'm trying to fill that emptiness. And I know that's probably not the right reaction to it. I'm trying to fill the emptiness with all the great memories that we had. I've told myself that every time there's a tear, I try and view the tear as a positive memory rather than a sad experience. The Dr. Zeus said, don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And I'm trying to remind myself of these things, trying to lean into the David Hawkins books of attachment and letting go, and understand that grief hits us in 20-minute spells. And I think to a degree, what I've read so far from his book has been true. Whether it's true because I read it or whether it's true because that's the reality, I don't know. My body is conforming to the readings. And I also think that in terms of my grieving experience so far, so I talked to you about the story that happened 26 minutes in, where the spirit, if that was what happened, my mum had that experience. I was for the only time it's hit me at this level, I would say probably 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes later, within that 30 minutes anyway, I was absolutely overwhelmed with emotion. And I don't know if that's because I've been holding it in for days, trying to be the support for my sisters and my mum and for me and my family and my dad, or whether it was just because I don't know. I don't know what it was. It was an overwhelming feeling I've never had before in my life. It took me off my feet. Literally, I was on the crumpled thing on the floor with I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was an emotion I've never experienced before or since. And I feel like in that moment, I don't know how long I was in that moment for, several minutes for sure. And my beautiful sisters came over and looked after me, and mum said it's okay. And they all kind of said, "You've been holding it in for so long. Like, we know you've been holding it in." That's the, I guess, the emotional thing about it. That's the release. I feel like so much came out in that short period of time that it's just left with a little bit of emptiness on the back of it. But really trying to lean into Dr. Zeus. Don't cry because it's over, smile because it happened. And there were so many good things. I've got this you can see if you're watching on video, I've got this photo book I did for my dad because he, towards the end, I got a copy for myself. And I don't find looking at those pictures make me emotional. They make me happy. I don't look at them and cry. I'm wearing his watch, which makes me feel connected. I've got 2 watches on. How weird is that? There's things that connect me to him. And I'm not full of tears, although I can have waves of that. Just feel a little bit empty, and I still making sense of it.
I mean, look, everyone does it differently. I mean, I don't think I've had massive. I mean, I had tears on Christmas Day, but I haven't cried a huge amount. There's bits of things like I'll be watching a show. I was watching something the other day, and it wasn't particularly emotional, but then I would well up and have some tears then. And and talking of your photos, I think what I did Christmas morning, I remember I spent like 2 hours Christmas morning just finding lots of photos, and I'd gone round, I think, taking photos in the past of photos, because a lot of these photos were like pre-digital. Yeah. So I took photos, and I have it all on Amazon, and I collated about 1,000 photos that we put as a bit of a slideshow in the house during after the funeral. And again, I haven't sat with him a lot to get emotional with it. And the other day I was putting some videos on my mum's memory stick, and there were videos, I haven't watched them wholly, but from his speech at my sister's wedding, my older sister's wedding, and which I'd never seen before as well. And it does feel weird to have that voice coming at you. And my mum was there watching it. She didn't really get massively emotional, but she was like, "Oh, look how he had more life there," because the last couple of years you could see the life draining out from him, which I now subsequently realize he must have been living with heart failure for a good couple of years. And it was it's difficult to watch and think about, like, the last couple of years where I feel like the man that I knew was slowly drifting away, right? He didn't really want to do too much. He would be sitting in the chair. And this makes me then feel angry at myself, because I was like trying to push him to do things, but yeah, he was probably living with heart failure and not really, making a fuss about it. And I was like, come on, let's do some exercise. Let's just get out and do things. Or in the end, he didn't even want to come around to my house or do anything. He just wanted to get up, sit in his chair, fall asleep, and then go to bed. And that was basically it. And it frustrated myself and my mum. And then I feel guilty now, because I'm like, those last few years, so there's all these different emotions, right? There's the anger, there's guilt, there's the denial, there's the, and there's no, I don't think, right or wrong way to handle this. It is what it is.
I'd agree. And I can see that, because me, my sisters, my brother, and my mum are all experiencing this in very different ways. And that's it just is what it is. I mean,
How is your mum, by the way? I mean, how is she? Is she by herself? Is she with people?
yeah, so she's been. Someone's been with her every single day. One of the members of the family have been there. I'm going down on Good Friday. I was there on Sunday. My sister's been around in between. My brother's been around. So she's had people around, but the evening's been by herself. I think, going back to the spirit thing, she feels like he's still in the house, or there's a presence there. She talks to him. She left messages on his phone. People might think that's mad, but she gives her comfort. She obviously has his phone, but it's just a way of her. We've talked about in the past recent episode before this happened about post-traumatic growth, and whether we grow through something, whether we go through something. I know that my dad would want us all to grow from the experience, and to move forward, not just suffer it. He doesn't want a funeral; he wants a celebration of life, which we've booked for the 17th of April now. So that's coming up, and we'll try and make it as fun as that kind, and as a celebration as much as we can. Bear in mind what's gone on. I mean, there's, it was Kubler-Ross outlined 5 stages of grief, didn't she? Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I don't really feel like I sit in any of those things. I don't really know where my mum sits in. Maybe mum's in the denial piece because she's still, feeling he's around. Or it's hard because we've known this is coming. 3 years ago, he got his. He passed away 3 years in a day after his diagnosis. So, it's we knew this was coming, and they gave him 6 months on his first diagnosis. So he's done really well. He's fought really hard. And I think it's given us a chance to almost grieve in advance. That's how it feels anyway. I don't know if that's true. And if an expert might say, no, you were just in total denial, I don't know. But I feel that's kind of where we are, or certainly where I am. But yeah, we're definitely all very, very different.
It's really hard. I mean, your dad as well, in the photos that you posted recently, and I think is now on your profile picture. I don't know how old he was in that picture, but he didn't. I mean, was it quite an old photo, those ones that you've been posting recently, a couple of them? Because
No. The main ones we're together, all post-diagnosis, actually. Because
really, because he looks really like, he doesn't even look in his 70s, if I'm honest, in those photos.
Yeah, he's in his 70, born in 1950, but they were kind of bucket list things. So again, I tried to do everything right. He wanted to go to the cricket. We took him to the cricket. He wanted to see the rugby, international rugby game. So trying to tick off the things he wanted to do while he was still able. But even then, although he
just looked like he would have. He looked like he would have been like, like you said, he was one of your buddies anyway. But like, he looked like, if you are one of the people down the football kind of or cricket club or whatever. He didn't look like 74 or 73 whenever those photos were taken.
Definitely one of my get me tearing up now. One of my best mates. I think they're the kind of words that bring the emotion back. And I think of him more as a friend than a dad. Actually, that's what gets me teary.
Are you with that thing in April? Are you doing a cremation or a burial or?
We are. Yeah, we're going to have he's going to cremation afterwards, so we've got a celebration service, and then we'll do the creme afterwards, just family. So service is at 11 at Stratford Subcastle Church, and then we'll have a wake, and then we'll do the creme later. I think one thing that's really important, and the reason I did the newsletter, which some people may have gone, I can't believe he's written that so soon, but there's something to take away from this, which is my dad died of prostate cancer, and 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. 52,000 people are diagnosed with prostate cancer every year on average. It's 144 men every single day. Every 45 minutes, someone dies from prostate cancer. My dad's now part of that statistic, and that's more than 12,000 men every year. And it's something that my dad could have avoided if he'd listened to the symptoms. His symptom was starting to wee more frequently in the night, and he just thought it was age. Didn't get it checked. By the time he did, it was too late. It was at stage 4 when he found out. And when he looks back, he was really frustrated because the symptoms were showing way before he went in. The 5 key symptoms are painful.
Yeah. So what are the symptoms so people can be clear on this?
There's 5 key ones. There's a painful or burning sensation during urination or ejaculation. Frequent urination, particularly at night, which is certainly a symptom my dad was experienced before he got tested. Difficulty stopping or starting urination, another symptom that he had. Sudden erectile dysfunction or blood in urine or semen. They're the 5 key symptoms. And there are tests you can get. I mean, there's something called an ICL test. I mean, there's loads of tests out there online, but there's really no excuse. So we don't always have to go straight to the doctors. There's something called an ICL test. You can get 6 for 60 quid. I think if you go to the website, you get 50% off your first order. So you can get 6 tests. That's for £30, I think it is, or thereabouts, that can give you this. It doesn't tell you if you've got prostate cancer, but it will tell you if there's something in the blood that needs checking that could be a sign of prostate cancer. And you can do that at home. So for hardly anything, get yourself tested every couple of months with something like that. You just wee on a stick and it'll tell you what's going on. And prevention is the best cause of cure. And we've talked about this a lot. And if you read Cured, right, the Cured book is not really about ever treating symptoms. It's treating the root of the problem. And there are things we'll talk about in future shows about nutrition. We're going to talk about gut health. We're going to talk about how important the microbiome is, which is central to a lot of the illnesses we experience. We've got to get better. And I think you've said many times that the future medicine will actually be about community and connection and doing things we don't do at the moment in modern medicine. Because at the moment, all we do is treat symptoms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, light therapy, vibrational therapy. I mean, what?
We treat symptoms, not problems. And there is something you can do to be more preventative. And if this episode can get one person to take a test, go do it. Go do it.
Two things I want to say is that one actually was the quick one. I was listening to Dana White, who's the UFC Ultimate Fighting Championship CEO, and he has turned his life around in the last couple of years. He said from a health perspective, and he wasn't really into, even though he had this promotional UFC, so he's around athletes the whole time, but he wasn't in great shape, and he does a few things now which have been a game changer for him. And a couple of things are, one was lying on a PEMF mat, which I think we might have talked about. My sister's bought my brother-in-law a PEMF mat, pulsed electromagnetic frequency mat, which is actually, I think it might be helping him, but it certainly helped Dana White. And then he also lies on a infrared and near-infrared light bed. So similar to what I've got, but I've got like a little lamp, but he's got a whole bed. And then he does oxygen restriction, like walking on a treadmill, and then cold therapy. But PEMF and the infrared stuff is all about frequency, right? Photobiomodulation, things like that. So I think that would be the energy of the future. That would be the energy medicine of the future, for sure.
But you and I know the important role that nutrition plays in all of this community spirit. You've got it as the foundations of your book. I think there's a quote in the Cured book. It's a Hippocrates quote, and Hippocrates obviously the grandfather of modern medicine, really. It really stuck with me, so much so that I was running when I heard that I was listening to the book, and I was running, like, stopped me in my tracks, and I wrote it down. And it says, before you try and heal someone, first ask, are they willing to give up the things that made them sick? It's so often we get a diagnosis, even in my dad's instance, and then we try and make the changes to our diet. Then we introduce infrared saunas, whatever it is. But we can be more proactive. And I know I'd like to think that we've done a lot of shows now about loss, and it's because of the way we are in our lives and things have happened to us. I think now, hopefully, this is an opportunity for you and I to start exploring the things that people can do and the routes people can take to never ever have to experience any of this stuff, because they make the changes now that just give you better health.
Exactly. Don't wait. Don't wait. I mean, they say, right, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. And so, but I wanted to mention the test stuff that you were talking about, because I was thinking about this the other day. I was chatting with a friend of mine, and I haven't done a blood test in a while, and he does it a bit more regularly, but I've got it all on my phone and on my app. And I was looking for tests that I might do, because I like to test things like the testosterone levels we were talking about, omega levels, which a lot of tests don't do, and they're quite expensive to do. But there was one test that they had there, and it was like, test for 70 different types of cancer or something like that. And actually, when I saw that, I thought, you know what, I really don't want to do that. And I know this is bad, maybe based on what you've just been saying about knowing ahead of time, right? Things, because when you know ahead of time, you can do things. But actually, there's also that flip side of nocebo effect. I think where you're suddenly screened, and like, for example, I'm not sure whether it's like pap scans, or there's some sort of scans, smear scans that women do, and when you look in the data, it was like, actually it doesn't prevent any cancers or deaths or something like that. There's something along those lines, and that might even be with the prostate one as well, because I think like a lot of people will have prostate cancer, a lot of men will have prostate cancer and be totally fine with it. I think my mate Ben, his dad, I mean, he's got prostate cancer, but I think he's fine with it. And so on my flip side, I totally get what you're saying, right? You need to know, because then if you know at stage 1, it can then go to stage 0, right? Presumably, if you know at stage 4, it's probably not going to go to stage 0. And obviously, we've just had that diagnosis with Kate. We don't know what's going on with Princess Catherine, and then King Charles. We don't really know what's going on. But it did scare me looking at that test where it's like, okay, 70 different types of cancer. Because then suddenly, like my family already think I'm a hypochondriac. They're like, and because of all the things I do, even sometimes people say, well, what happens when you go to another place and you don't have your weighted blanket and you don't have your this and you don't have that, right? And so, part of me is like, you get this back and you're suddenly like, because I have my aura ring as well. And I'm like, okay, my stats are suddenly down. I need to change this. And that could be the worst thing for me.
I would always say that being an ostrich is never a good thing. Like, don't bury your head in the sand. I think having been through it with my dad, I don't wish that on anybody. And I don't just mean, I'm not talking about my experience of losing my dad. I'm talking about the experience that he went through, the level of pain he had to endure for a long, long time, the discomfort, the sores, the lack of mobility, the tumors on his throat, liver, kidney. The from catheters to it's not something I wish on anyone, and it was completely avoidable had he gone and checked the symptoms. Now, we never know whether he would have potentially cured the cancer. We'll never know that. But what we do know is by the time he got it checked, it was too late. It was already, they gave him 6 months and said, this is a terminal cancer, an aggressive cancer. And it is where it is. And there are certain things out there for a relatively low investment that you can do at home, or for completely free, go and see a GP and get a checkup. Because 1 in 8 people are going to suffer from this. So there's a pretty good chance, if you're listening to this in your mail, that you're in a pretty high percentage chance. And a check could be the difference between enduring, what my dad's had to go through and ending saying goodbye to the people you love or not. And if this show can just encourage one listener to go and do that, then I'll be delighted.
If people don't have those symptoms though, but they are looking to prevent those symptoms occurring in the future, I don't know a huge amount about prostate cancer, but what are the kind of current theories about what is driving that 1 in 8 to have it? Is it a dietary thing? Is it a just luck of the draw thing? Is it do you know?
Honestly, I don't know. I do know that from reading Cured and from the preventative medicine that glucose has a lot to play. Certainly post diagnosis, cancer feeds off glucose, right? So it would lead me to think that a high processed food, glucose-based diet probably isn't going to be good for you with all the carcinogens and things you're having there. But it's probably a separate discussion. I'm certainly not an expert on the subject to be able to give correct advice on it, but I do know that there are things you can do to just keep yourself in check. And I've bought these ICL tests. I now wear on a stick every 2 months just to keep a bit of peace of mind for my family. I don't want to put my mum through it a second time.
So what is it? You just buy what, these things from Amazon?
I'll put a link in the show notes. Yeah, it's ICLE test. I mean, there's loads of tests out there. That's the one I got because it was just a really easy one. It doesn't tell you if you've got cancer, by the way. It tells you if there's an abnormality, that then you go and get it checked.
Because I think like sometimes with these tests, it's a bit like the PCR tests, that polymerase chain reaction test that they did for COVID, where basically the founder or the inventor of the test, was it Gary Mulligan or something? He's passed on now, but he's saying the tests are in a way useless to diagnose things because depending on the cycle count that you use, you will be able to detect anything. So anything over like a 24 cycle count or something like that, and I think during COVID they were using like 32 or something, will detect things. So you could just detect anything. It's like, I think the analogy I gave is like, if you've got a clean dinner table and it looks clean to the naked eye, but then you get like a microscope or you get like a magnifying glass, you'll see the little bits of dirt. It's the same thing with some of these tests where if they're looking for such a small amount of things.
That's exactly it. So the ICL test is about finding blood in urine. That's all it does. Microscopic. So we'll think our urine is clear, and actually it detects blood. So it's not necessarily the only thing that's going to tell you if you've got cancer or not. But if you look at the testimonials, there's over 4,000 reviews for the test that I decided to use and purchase. I'm not in any way affiliated to ICL test, by the way. I just want to save people from the pain that my dad's had to endure and we've been through.
Well, I think I'll do that. I think I'll buy one of those and.
There's one here that says, I'll read a random review. For all you doubters, I can assure you this works. Having used this twice, the second time just to make sure, I was ultimately diagnosed with bladder cancer. Thanks to this test, it's being diagnosed early. The prognosis is good. I'm currently undergoing treatment. Small price to pay for peace of mind. Second one, test results in early diagnosis of bladder cancer. No recognizable symptoms, but cancer confirmed on appointment with GP. I bought my kit for my husband, it turned out we discovered an aggressive asymptomatic prostate cancer. I'm sure, like everything, you can get cheaper, but I chose his products, and thank goodness I did. I mean, there's loads of these reviews out there. It's not the only thing I'm sure that's going to save you or help, but it's something more than most of us are doing as men at the moment. And I just think it's or women actually. This isn't a male test, by the way. This is a unisex test. That prostate cancer is one symptom of prostate cancer is blood in the urine, as it is for many cancers. But we assume we'll see the blood. Of course, it can be microscopic, as you mentioned, and this is an early warning sign. But look, we've rabbited on for an hour and 5. Thank you for listening today, and for
thank you for sharing, Nick, and my deepest condolences, obviously, to you and your entire family and your mum especially. And I know being close with my mum, and she's spending more time by herself at the house, which is both good and bad. But I think just keeping her busy, keeping her with company, is going to be really, really crucial, I think, in the early days. So yeah, I know you're already doing that, which is great. But yeah, I mean, please pass on my condolences to everyone. It's
And also, thank you for those that are listening. People won't know that Harry was I was in touch with Harry throughout the situation. He was incredibly supportive and someone who looked out for me during the whole time we went through the last few days. So Harry, I very much appreciate your support as well as a friend, rather than just a co-host, because that's what brought us together. Friendship first, co-host second, right? So that was really good. I'm actually off to Nicaragua for 2 weeks now, so I feel like I'm back at work. I'm 100 miles an hour trying to get everything done. It's been a brilliant distraction, if I'm honest, and I think the next 2 weeks gives me a chance to do some proper reflective work. So I will look forward to telling you about Nicaragua. Somewhere I've never been to South America before, or Central America. So next time we meet, mate, will be post hopefully a nice break with my wife.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you definitely need it. I need to do something similar at some point very soon. I think it's important to just get out of the environment, and it's great that you're just going, you and Lucy. I think that's great. I don't know if that's the first time in years. Have you done holidays together?
Yeah, wife's parents taking the kids for Easter, so I can't complain. Yeah, it's gonna be great. I'm sure they're so happy. I think they'd quite like to come to Nicaragua, but there we are. Harry, thank you for being a dear friend, and thank you, listeners, for checking in. We will, I assure you, try and stop bringing every episode being about loss. It's just where we are. These shows about me and Harry having a conversation about what's on our minds at the moment. So,
yeah, and please, if you haven't already, do subscribe to the show. I know some people listen to the show and don't subscribe, but it really helps us if you do subscribe. And think of 1 or 2 friends that you can literally share it with now. Tap on it, click a share on WhatsApp or in your social media. That would be really helpful as well. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, and we're also on YouTube. You can watch these videos live and see us chatting to each other in live format. So
you can see my superhero T-shirt that I've got on, my Super Om T-shirt, my little yoga T-shirt.
Harry, have a great week, sir. I will speak to you in a couple of weeks.
And enjoy your holiday, Nick. Take care.